The funeral had left the air thick with sorrow and the scent of lilies. The church bells had long gone silent, but Serene Valen still heard them echoing somewhere deep in her mind, dull, lingering tolls that marked not just the end of her husband's life, but the end of an entire era of hers. Ezra Valen had been her anchor, quiet, strong, the kind of man who didn't need to be loud to be respected. His absence felt like a door that had been slammed shut in the middle of a storm. Now, all she could hear was wind. The drive to her brother's house was long, lined with pines that swayed under the late autumn sky. The clouds were bruised purple, as though even the heavens were mourning. Lyra sat beside her mother, hands clasped over the hem of her black dress, her small face turned toward the window. At 13, she carried silence differently, like an adult forced to mature too early. Serene glanced at her daughter and tried to smile, but it faltered. "We won't stay long," she murmured. Lyra nodded. "I know." The Kellen estate sat at the edge of the hills, glass and steel jutting out from manicured lawns, an architectural boast of modern wealth. Darius Kellen had always been that way, flash over feeling, charm over sincerity. To the world, he was the successful older brother, the family man who had it all. But Serene knew better. She'd seen how easily Darius's affection turned into calculation. How his eyes, always darting, looked at people the same way others looked at investments. When the car rolled up the gravel driveway, Melina Kellen appeared on the front steps, her smile picture perfect, her dress too bright for a morning visit. "Serene," she called out, voice dripping honey. "You poor thing, come here, love." Serene stepped out, her knees weak from days without proper rest. Melina rushed forward and wrapped her in an embrace that felt more like possession than comfort. The woman's perfume was suffocating, sweet and sharp, like fake roses dipped in alcohol. "Oh, you've lost so much weight," Melina cooed, pulling back to inspect her. "You must eat something. I told Darius we should take care of you for a while." "Thank you," Serene said softly. Her voice cracked on the second word. Behind them, Darius emerged from the doorway, tall, handsome, and deceptively calm. His suit was casual, but his gaze was precise. "Sister," he greeted, opening his arms. "Home feels emptier without you." It was strange, hearing the word home from him. Once upon a time, it had meant something. When they were children, they'd shared late-night whispers about escaping their strict father and traveling the world. But years had passed, and money had changed Darius into someone she barely recognized. Serene let him hug her, though she felt his arm tighten briefly, just enough to remind her that he always liked control. Lyra stood quietly behind, eyes flicking from one adult to another. "Well," Darius said, gesturing toward the house. "Come in, both of you. Melina's prepared something special. It's not much, but you need warmth tonight." Inside, the house was spotless, almost sterile. A faint citrus scent filled the air, the kind of artificial freshness that erased the traces of real life. The walls were covered in art that screamed wealth but whispered nothing of emotion. At the dining table, silver gleamed under soft yellow lights. Melina had set out tea and pastries, an odd choice for a condolence visit, but Serene didn't comment. She sat quietly, letting the cup warm her hands. Darius leaned forward, voice soft, brotherly. "You've been through too much, Serene. Ezra was a good man. He left you well cared for, didn't he?" The question seemed innocent, but Serene's stomach tightened. "He did," she replied cautiously. Melina chimed in, stirring her tea though she hadn't added sugar. "Such a thoughtful husband. I can't imagine what $10 million even looks like. He must have wanted you and Lyra to live comfortably forever." The words dropped like stones. Serene froze mid-sip. Melina's tone was airy, but her eyes glittered, sharp and calculating. Darius shot her a subtle warning glance, but it was too late. Lyra, from across the table, noticed it instantly. Her voice, small but certain, broke the silence. "Mom, they smile with their teeth, not their hearts." Darius's smile stiffened. "Kids say the darndest things," he chuckled. Melina let out a brittle laugh. "Oh, she's so perceptive, just like her father, isn't she?" Serene placed her cup down, her pulse quickening. The way Melina said father felt like a needle jab. "I appreciate your concern," Serene said, her tone cool but polite. "But I don't want to think about money right now. Ezra's gone." Darius nodded sympathetically. "Of course. I didn't mean to bring it up like that. We just want you to rest. Maybe get away for a few days." "Get away?" Serene asked. "Yes," Melina said quickly. "A small family trip. The four of us. There's a valley a few hours out. Peaceful, untouched. You need fresh air, sunshine. Grief can rot you if you sit too long inside it." The suggestion hung in the air like incense, sweet, invasive, and oddly rehearsed. Lyra glanced at her mother, then at Darius, her brow furrowing slightly. "Can't we rest here?" "Oh, little one," Melina said with a practiced pout. "You'll love it there. It's so beautiful." A perfect place to clear your mom's mind. Serene managed a weak smile. The offer on the surface sounded kind, but something in her gut twisted. Ezra had once told her that trust was like glass. Once cracked, you could polish it all you want, but the fracture always remained. That night, after dinner, Serene stood outside the house while Lyra dozed off in the guest room. The air was sharp, carrying the scent of rain. She watched as Darius and Melina whispered in the kitchen, their shadows flickering against the blinds. She didn't hear their words, but she didn't need to. The rhythm of their voices, quick, controlled, layered with tension, said enough. A soft voice startled her. "Evening, Miss Fallon." She turned. Mr. Reeve, the old neighbor from next door, stood by the fence with a lantern in hand. His weathered face was half-lit, eyes wise and kind. "Mr. Reeve," she said softly, "you shouldn't be out in the cold." He gave a small smile. "Cold doesn't hurt old bones like it used to. But worry does. You've had enough of both, I reckon." Serene exhaled, unsure what to say. Reeve stepped closer, his lantern swaying. "Your brother, he's a clever man. Too clever. Be careful, child. When money blinds kinship, trust becomes poison. Watch who drives when your road turns dark." The words rooted deep inside her. "What do you mean?" He simply shook his head. "Sometimes the devil doesn't knock. He brings flowers and says he's family." Before she could ask more, he tipped his hat and turned back toward his dimly lit porch, leaving Serene standing in silence, the night folding around her like a warning. Inside, the house felt colder. Lyra stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. Serene brushed a hand through her daughter's hair and whispered, "It's all right, love. I'm here." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure if she believed it. Morning arrived gray and damp. Melina was already dressed in hiking attire, cheerful as sunlight. "Rise and shine. We'll leave in an hour," she announced, carrying a tray of smoothies to the table. Energy for the road. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly as she watched Melina pour the drinks into glass bottles. Serene noticed the faint shimmer of powder dissolving in one of them, or maybe she imagined it. Grief made people see ghosts where none existed. "Still," Lyra whispered, "Mom, I don't want that drink." Serene smiled faintly. "It's just juice, honey." But Lyra only pressed her lips together, accepting the bottle but not drinking. She waited until Melina turned away before tipping a small amount into the sink. The liquid foamed slightly before clearing. Her heart pounded. They loaded the car with bags. Darius whistled softly, pretending ease. "We'll be there by noon. You'll love it, Serene. Untouched nature, no signal, just peace." No signal. The phrase echoed like a bell of dread. The first half of the journey was filled with small talk, Melina chatting about future investments, Darius reminiscing about their childhood. But as the road narrowed and trees gave way to rocky terrain, Serene began to feel drowsy. Her head felt heavy, her vision flickering. Lyra's hand found hers. "Mom, I'm fine," Serene murmured, though her voice slurred slightly. "Just tired." Melina turned from the passenger seat, voice sugary. "We're almost there. Just relax." The world tilted. The hum of the car became distant, muffled. Serene's eyelids fluttered as darkness began to seep in from the corners of her vision. Lyra's pulse raced. She saw her mother's hand fall limp. Darius muttered something under his breath, pulling the car to a stop on the edge of a vast, barren stretch, a desert valley shimmering under the harsh sun. "What's happening?" Lyra cried. "Car trouble," Darius said smoothly, stepping out. He opened the hood, pretending to check it. "Melina, help me." Melina followed, glancing back briefly, not at Serene, but at Lyra, with an expression too calm for the situation. "Stay here, sweetheart," she said sweetly. "We'll get help." Lyra's heart thudded. She looked at the barren land stretching endlessly in every direction. Not a soul in sight. Melina whispered to Darius, "Let's make it quick." They took a small backpack, one Lyra noticed held water bottles and snacks, and started walking toward the horizon. Lyra turned to her mother, shaking her shoulder. "Mom, wake up." Serene barely stirred, whispering incoherently. Lyra searched the car, found a protein bar under the seat, half a bottle of water, a small first aid kit. She hid them beneath a torn blanket, just in case. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, merciless and burning. Darius and Melina didn't return. The truth began to settle in, slow and suffocating. They weren't coming back. As the day bled into night, the temperature dropped sharply. Lyra wrapped her mother in her jacket, whispering softly, her voice trembling. "Don't you die on me, Mom. Please." Serene stirred faintly, her lips dry and cracked, murmuring a single word. "Ezra." Lyra leaned closer, her small hand gripping her mother's. "They left us," she whispered, voice breaking. "But I'll keep you alive. I promise." The desert wind howled through the hollow valley, carrying the echo of betrayal. And beneath the cruel moonlight, A child's quiet vow burned brighter than any star. The sun rose over the valley like a cruel overseer, spilling its fire across the sand and stone. Serene Valen's eyelids fluttered against the glare, her skin slick with sweat. Her body felt heavy, as though her bones had turned to lead. A strange metallic taste lingered in her mouth, and her mind was a haze of broken images. Melina's false smile, Darius's calm voice, the faint smell of citrus from the smoothie. For a long moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she turned her head and saw Lyra crouched beside her, face pale and sunburned, clutching the small, half-empty water bottle to her chest. "Mom," Lyra whispered, voice hoarse. "You're awake." Serene's throat was dry as dust. Where are we?" Lyra's lips trembled. "They said they were going to get help. But it's been hours." "I think," she stopped, her voice cracking. "They're not coming back." Serene tried to push herself up, but her body protested with waves of nausea and dizziness. The world swam. The edges of the car shimmered in the heat. What happened?" "They gave you something," Lyra said softly. "That smoothie. It wasn't right. I didn't drink it. It smelled like medicine." Serene's heart seized in her chest. Her brother's face flashed in her memory, calm, deliberate, his voice promising a peaceful trip. She looked around. The road they'd come from was nothing more than a pale scar winding into emptiness. No cars, no houses, no signs of life. Only sand, scrub, and the sound of wind brushing against metal. Her voice rasped, "How long?" Lyra glanced at the sun, blinking through tears. "Maybe a day, maybe more. I tried to keep you in the shade." Serene leaned back against the car door, pressing a trembling hand to her forehead. "He left us here," she murmured. "He left us to die." Lyra's small shoulders stiffened. "Then we don't die." Her voice was so sure, so steady, that Serene turned to look at her. Really look. The girl's eyes were fierce beneath their exhaustion. Ezra's eyes. The same steady fire that had once steadied Serene through storms. "All right," Serene whispered, fighting back tears. "Then we don't." By afternoon, the sun became merciless. Heat shimmered like liquid glass across the sand, the air so dry it burned to breathe. Serene forced herself to sip the water, tiny drops at a time. Lyra rationed it strictly, dividing what little they had into invisible halves. "We need to stay under shade during the day," Lyra said, repeating something Ezra had taught her once on a camping trip. "We move when it's cooler. If we wander now, we'll just get lost." Serene could barely nod. Her thoughts came in and out like static. The desert seemed endless, every direction identical. By sunset, the temperature fell sharply. The heat lifted, replaced by biting cold. Lyra scavenged through the car and found a torn blanket and a cracked flashlight. She wrapped Serene tightly, whispering to keep her awake. "Mom, can you hear me?" Serene's lips barely moved. "Yes. You have to stay with me." "I will." But inside, Serene wasn't sure. Her body ached. Her heartbeat was slow and uneven. Each breath felt like pulling air through a straw. She tried to remember her last conversation with Darius before the trip, his tone, his exact words. "You need peace. You need fresh air." All masks for something darker. The memory made her tremble with rage, even as her body shivered with cold. The next morning, Serene woke to the sound of wind rattling the car frame. The horizon glowed pink and gold. Lyra was sitting cross-legged nearby, carefully dividing the remaining water cap by cap. She handed one to her mother, her fingers trembling. "I think there's a town somewhere north," she said quietly. "I saw a map once on the dashboard when Darius was driving. Maybe 20 miles, maybe more. But we can't walk it without food." Serene reached out, touching her daughter's cheek. "You're brave." Lyra didn't smile. "I'm scared." "So am I," Serene whispered. "That's why we'll do this together." By midday, Serene tried standing. Her legs buckled. The world pulsed with white light. "Sit down," Lyra begged, holding her arm. "You're not ready." But Serene shook her head. "If we wait too long, we'll run out of everything." They searched the car for anything useful. Nothing but broken glass, a torn tire, and the faint smell of fuel. Lyra's eyes darted to the trunk. Inside were 2 old blankets, a flashlight, and Serene's handbag, emptied of wallet and jewelry. Darius and Melina had stripped them clean. The sight twisted Serene's stomach. "They planned this," she said through gritted teeth. "From the beginning." Lyra bit her lip. "Why would Uncle Darius do that?" Serene hesitated. The truth tasted bitter. "Because your fathers will left everything to us. He couldn't stand it. Not after all these years." Lyra stared down at the sand. "But we're family." The word broke something in Serene's chest. "Not anymore." That night, the stars came out, cold, clear, and infinite. Lyra sat beside her mother, wrapped in both blankets. They shared the last crumbs of the protein bar, chewing slowly as if it could stretch time. Serene's mind drifted. She saw flashes of her brother's smile, her husband's funeral, Melina's perfume. The world blurred in and out. She wasn't sure what was real anymore. Her head lolled to the side. Lyra panicked, shaking her. Mom. Wake up. You can't sleep yet. Serene blinked groggily. I'm just tired. No. You have to stay awake. Lyra's voice cracked, desperation spilling through. Dad said people get cold and fall asleep and never wake up. Tears stung her eyes, but she forced herself to focus. Tell me something, Serene whispered weakly. Keep talking. Lyra swallowed hard. Okay, remember when Dad taught me how to start a fire at the lake? He said I had survivor hands. Serene smiled faintly. He was right. I miss him, Lyra whispered. I know. Silence settled between them, thick and fragile. The moon hung overhead like a pale witness. Lyra stared at the stars until her eyelids drooped. Serene fought to stay awake, to listen for any sign of help. But all she heard was wind. By the fourth day, delirium began to take her. The sun had scorched her lips raw, and every breath felt like swallowing needles. Sometimes she saw Ezra standing in the distance, hand outstretched, calling her name. Sometimes she heard Darius's laugh echoing through the valley. Lyra kept her grounded. Every hour, she dapped Serene's forehead with the damp corner of a cloth, whispered stories, sang songs under her breath. Once, when Serene woke in a fever haze, Lyra was crying silently beside her. Don't cry, Serene murmured. We'll make it. Lyra's voice trembled. You always say that. Because it has to be true. By the fifth morning, Serene could barely move. Her tongue was cracked, her eyes half open. Lyra stared at the horizon, her vision swimming. The sun seemed crueler than ever. Then, through the shimmer of heat, something moved. A figure. Small at first, then clearer, a man, walking beside a brown horse, his clothes dusty, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing his face. Lyra blinked hard, certain she was hallucinating. But the figure grew closer. She stumbled to her feet, waving her arms. Help! Her voice cracked. Please. The man stopped, squinting. Then he started running. Lyra's knees gave out halfway toward him, but she didn't stop crawling. Her vision blurred. The man reached her, an elderly figure with kind, weathered eyes. Dear God, he muttered, kneeling. Child, what happened? Lyra pointed weakly toward the car. My mom. She's not waking up. He turned to the horizon and whistled sharply. Within minutes, a woman appeared in the distance, older, graceful despite the rough terrain. She carried a water flask and hurried toward them. Elias and Amara Bronte. Elias lifted Serene carefully into his arms. Her skin was hot to the touch, her breathing shallow. Amara pressed a damp cloth to Serene's lips, murmuring softly, It's all right now, love. You're safe. Lyra clung to Amara's skirt, tears streaming down her face. They left us, she whispered. My uncle and aunt. They left us here. Amara's eyes darkened with quiet fury, but her voice stayed calm. Then God must have led us here today. Elias carried Serene to the horse, laying her gently across its back. Let's get them home, he said, before the sun takes them for good. As the horse began its slow walk toward the distant hills, Lyra looked back once, at the abandoned car, the empty road, the scorched sand where their family had betrayed them. Something inside her hardened. That was the place her innocence died. And far ahead, in the shimmering horizon, the path to their survival and revenge had just begun. When Serene Vallon awoke, she was somewhere between a dream and death. Her body didn't feel like her own. She could sense warmth, softness, and a faint scent of herbs. Something cool pressed against her forehead. A voice, a woman's voice, spoke gently through the fog. Easy now, child. You're safe. Serene's eyes flickered open. Above her was a wooden ceiling, beams darkened with age. The light filtering through a small window painted the room in hues of gold and dust. A pot simmered quietly somewhere nearby, releasing the soothing aroma of chamomile and thyme. Her lips parted, and she whispered hoarsely, Lyra. I'm here, Mom. The voice came from her right. Serene turned her head weakly and saw her daughter sitting on a small stool, her face thinner, her cheeks sunburned, but her eyes, those unbreakable eyes, still fierce and alive. Tears pricked Serene's eyes. She tried to reach out, but her arm trembled halfway. Lyra caught her hand quickly, pressing it to her cheek. It's okay, Lyra said softly. You're okay now. We're safe. A shadow appeared at the doorway. It was the elderly man who had found them, the one with the horse. His posture was straight despite his age, his face weathered but kind. He smiled faintly when their eyes met. Glad to see you awake, he said in a deep, measured tone. You gave us quite a scare. Serene blinked slowly. You're the man who found us. He nodded. Elias Bronte. And this here is my wife, Amara. You're at our farm. We're a good 10 miles north of where you were found. Amara entered quietly, carrying a steaming bowl. Her silver hair was braided down her back, her eyes calm as still water. "Drink this," she said, kneeling beside the bed. "It'll help your strength return." The warmth of the broth filled Serene's cracked lips, and she swallowed slowly, her throat burning with the effort. "How long?" she whispered. 5 days, Amara said gently. 5 long days under that cursed sun. The Lord must have had his hand over you both. Lyra's fingers tightened around her mother's hand. "You were burning up, Mom. You wouldn't wake up, I thought." Her voice cracked, and she buried her face in Serene's arm. Serene stroked her daughter's hair weakly. "You kept me alive," she whispered. "You saved me." Elias leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his gaze distant. "Some storms don't come to destroy you, but to wash the liars out of your life," he said quietly. "You'll see that in time." The words sank deep into Serene's chest. They weren't just comforting. They carried truth like scripture. Days passed slowly at the Bronte farm. Serene regained her strength inch by inch. Amara nursed her with teas brewed from wild herbs, taught Lyra how to mix them, and made sure both of them ate warm meals. Their home was old but peaceful, a world away from Darius and Melina's marble mansion. Chickens clucked outside. The steady rhythm of Elias chopping would fill the mornings. At night, the house glowed from the fireplace, crackling softly as Amara hummed forgotten lullabies. Lyra, restless but resilient, helped with chores. She carried buckets of water from the well, fed the animals, and listened eagerly whenever Elias told stories about his youth. "Survival," he said one evening, "isn't just about body, it's about spirit. You can't heal one without the other." Lyra looked at him curiously. "Did you ever almost die?" Elias smiled faintly. "Once or twice. But life has a strange way of testing how badly you want to stay in it." Serene, listening from the bed, felt those words pierce through her exhaustion. She wanted to live. Not just survive, but live long enough to see justice. On the 4th evening, as dusk settled in shades of blue and amber, Serene sat on the porch wrapped in a shawl. Amara joined her, carrying 2 cups of mint tea. "You've been quiet," Amara said, settling into the rocking chair beside her. Serene stared at the horizon, where the fading sun painted the fields in soft gold. "I've been thinking. About him." Serene's throat tightened. "My brother. And his wife." Amara nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving the horizon. "I thought as much. You speak their names in your sleep. Sometimes with anger. Sometimes with grief." Serene sighed shakily. "They took everything, Amara. My husband left us money to live on. A trust, a home, a safety net. Darius stole all of it. He left us to die out there." Amara looked at her with quiet empathy. "Evil wears the face of family more often than strangers." "But child," her voice softened, "your anger is valid, but don't let it blind you. Burn their lies, not your soul." Serene turned to her, tears glistening in her eyes. "How do I do that?" Amara smiled faintly. "You'll know when the time is right. Pain has a way of turning into clarity when the heart is ready." The 2 women sat in silence, listening to the soft chorus of crickets. Inside, Lyra was writing in her journal, something she'd started since the day they arrived. Amara had given her the small notebook, saying, "Write your story before someone else does." Each page was filled with small, careful handwriting. The trip, the smoothies, her mother collapsing, Darius's fake panic. Every detail, preserved with a child's sharp memory. That night, Serene watched her daughter fall asleep beside the open pages and felt a deep ache in her chest, an ache that wasn't just grief anymore. It was purpose. The next morning, Serene woke before dawn. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of hay and dew. Elias was already outside, checking the fences. She stepped out quietly. Her strength had mostly returned, though her legs still trembled slightly. Elias looked up, surprised. "You shouldn't be out here so early." "I needed air," she said. He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "You've got that look. The kind people get when they realize they've got unfinished business." Serene met his gaze. "I can't let them get away with it." "You shouldn't," he said simply. "But do it right. When wolves steal from you, don't howl. Set a trap." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "That sounds like something my husband would have said." He was a wise man then. Serene hesitated. "How do you know when you're ready to face them?" Elias leaned on his cane. "When the hate stops screaming and starts whispering, that's when you know it's turned into strength." She nodded slowly. "Then I'm close." A week later, Serene had fully recovered. Her skin still bore the marks of the sun, but her spirit was steadier. She felt sharper, colder, more focused. Elias brought her a newspaper one afternoon. "Thought you should see this." The headline froze her blood. "Widow presumed dead, estate claimed by next of kin." Below it was a picture of Darius Kellen, standing in front of reporters, face solemn but triumphant. The article explained that Serene Valen and her daughter had disappeared during a tragic road accident and were now presumed dead after days of searching. Darius had already been granted full control of Ezra Valen's inheritance and properties. Serene's hand trembled as she held the paper. "He didn't even wait," she whispered. "He couldn't." Lyra read over her shoulder, her jaw tightening. "He said you were dead. He took everything, Mom." Amara placed a gentle hand on Serene's shoulder. "Then this is your rebirth. Let him think you're gone. Let him build his world on that lie." Elias nodded. "People who build on sand eventually sink. You'll be there when it happens." Serene folded the newspaper slowly, her face unreadable. For the first time since the desert, she smiled, but it was not the smile of a grieving woman. It was something colder. "Patient. We'll rebuild quietly," she said. "And then we'll make them see." That night, Lyra added the final page to her journal for the day. Day 5. "Mom's stronger now. Uncle Darius says we're dead. Maybe it's good. Dead people can't be hurt anymore. They can only watch." She closed the notebook and looked out the window. The moon was high, the fields bathed in silver light. Somewhere out there, her uncle and aunt were celebrating, believing they'd buried her and her mother in sand and silence. But the desert had not taken them. It had remade them. And beneath the stars of that quiet countryside, Serene and Lyra began the slow, deliberate work of becoming ghosts with purpose. Ghosts who would one day walk back into the world and demand truth. The morning mist curled through the valley like a soft veil when Serene Valen stepped out of the Bronte farmhouse. The world looked new. Fresh dew on the grass, pale sunlight breaking through the haze, the faint hum of life stirring after a long silence. Her body still carried the scars of the desert, but her mind was sharper than it had ever been. Elias watched her from the porch, pipe in hand, eyes narrowed against the morning light. "You've got a storm behind those eyes again," he said with a faint smile. Serene exhaled slowly. "The kind that doesn't pass until it's finished." He nodded. "Good. But remember what I told you. Revenge is best when it doesn't look like revenge. You heal first. Then you choose how you strike." Serene looked out across the field where Lyra was helping Amara hang washed sheets between wooden poles. The fabric danced gently in the wind, glowing white against the sun. For the first time since that horrific day, her daughter looked like a child again, laughing barefoot, her hair pulled into a messy braid that sight alone steadied Serene's heart. "I don't want her to lose her childhood because of what they did," she murmured. "I need to rebuild something for her." Elias tapped the ashes from his pipe. "Then start here. Build something new from the ashes. That's how healing becomes power." The following days moved with purpose. Amara taught Serene how to tend the herb garden behind the farmhouse. Lavender, chamomile, basil, thyme. She learned the names of the plants, how to dry them, how to use their oils to soothe fever or treat burns. It gave her hands something to do and her mind something to focus on other than the rage that occasionally clawed up her throat. Lyra spent her mornings reading whatever books the Brontes had in their modest library. She devoured everything. Old novels, farming manuals, even Elias's notebooks filled with quotes and reflections from a life lived quietly but deeply. One evening, while the fire crackled in the hearth, Lyra handed Serene a page she had copied in her neat, looping handwriting. It read, "Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. But never forget. Memory is the soil where justice grows." Serene looked up from the note, her heart swelling with both pride and grief. "Where did you find this?" "In Elias's notebook," Lyra said. "He said it reminded him of you." Serene folded the page carefully and tucked it into her pocket. "Then I'll keep it. For when I forget who I am." Weeks turned into months. The seasons began to shift, and with them, Serene and Lyra changed too. Their skin regained color. Their bodies grew stronger. The sun no longer burned, it nourished. The desert was a distant nightmare, but the memory of it, of thirst, fear, betrayal, never left. It lived quietly inside Serene, shaping her resolve. Every morning, she wrote in a small leather journal Amara gave her. She documented everything, her recovery, her thoughts, her dreams, and the fragments of memory from that cursed day. It wasn't just healing. It was preparation. By the 3rd month, she had a plan forming. Not revenge, not yet, but reclamation. They needed money. They needed identity. They needed to exist again without revealing themselves. Elias helped her navigate the legal tangles. Using an old contact in the city, a retired lawyer who owed him a favor, he arranged for Serene and Lyra to obtain new documentation under assumed names. They became Selena and Leora Vale. New names. New beginnings. When Lyra asked why they couldn't use their real ones, Serene crouched beside her and said softly, "Because the world thinks we're dead, sweetheart. And sometimes, it's better to let the world believe that until we're ready to show them what they buried." Lyra nodded solemnly, understanding more than most adults would. One afternoon, Serene joined Elias in the barn, helping mend an old cart. As they worked, he asked without looking up, "You ever think about going back?" Serene hesitated, tightening a bolt. "Every day." "What stops you?" She looked out toward the golden fields. "Timing. If I go now, I'll have nothing. No power, no proof, no plan. They'll paint me as crazy. Or worse, they'll finish what they started." Elias grunted approvingly. "Good. That's the right kind of patience. Don't rush a reckoning." He paused, then added, "But when the time comes, don't aim to destroy. Aim to expose. Truth is a sharper blade than revenge." Serene met his eyes. "Maybe. But sometimes it takes both." That night, as the moon climbed high, Lyra couldn't sleep. She stepped outside and found her mother standing near the garden, staring at the stars. "Mom." Serene turned, her face illuminated by the silvery light. "Can't sleep either?" Lyra shook her head. "I keep dreaming of that night. The car breaking down. You not waking up." Serene walked over and crouched down to face her. "That memory will fade, I promise. But what matters is what we do now. You saved me, Lyra. That means something. You gave me another chance to make things right." Lyra hesitated. "Do you think we'll ever see Uncle Darius again?" Serene's eyes hardened. "Oh, we will. But on our terms." Lyra studied her mother's face, then nodded with quiet trust. "Okay." Serene kissed her forehead. "Now go on, my brave girl. Tomorrow's another day." As Lyra went back inside, Serene stood alone under the stars, whispering to the night, "I'm coming for you, Darius. You just don't know it yet." By spring, Serene and Lyra had become part of the Bronte family. They worked the land, sold herbs and salves in the nearby town, and lived simply. People there knew them as the quiet widow and her daughter who helped an old couple on their farm. But beneath that quiet life, something else was growing. Serene began studying business and law again through free online courses at the town's library. She read about estate transfers, inheritance disputes, and financial fraud. Every night, she took notes, connecting dots, reconstructing the puzzle of how Darius could have taken everything so easily. It wasn't just greed, it was orchestration. The will, the lawyers, the staged accident, the forged signatures, and Melina, her brother's wife, the one with the false smile and expensive perfume, she had been part of it too. The deeper Serene dug, the more the truth surfaced like rot from under polished marble. She found that Darius had not only taken her husband's inheritance, but also transferred the ownership of Ezra's research company to his own name, claiming he was continuing his brother-in-law's legacy. He had sold off the patents and used the money to buy luxury properties, all while standing before cameras pretending to grieve. The sight of his smug face in one of the online interviews almost made Serene shatter the laptop, but instead she smiled coldly. "Keep talking, Darius," she whispered. "Every lie you speak is another thread I'll pull." One night, Serene sat with Amara as they folded laundry. Amara, as always, seemed to sense the storm brewing inside her. "You've built yourself back from nothing," Amara said. "But now comes the real test. Can you stay human when the chance to hurt them arrives?" Serene looked up. "Do you think I'll lose myself?" Amara smiled faintly. "Only if you forget why you started. Don't fight for revenge, child. Fight for freedom." Serene was silent for a long time, then nodded. "Freedom," she repeated softly. "For Lyra. For me." Amara reached over and took her hand. "Then you're ready." Serene frowned slightly. "Ready for what?" Amara's eyes gleamed in the firelight. "To stop surviving. To start reclaiming." A week later, Serene packed a small bag. Elias helped her load it onto the back of his truck. "You're going?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Yes," she said. "To the city. To see what's left of the world that buried me." Lyra ran up and hugged her tightly. "When will you come back?" "Soon," Serene whispered. "And when I do, we'll be ready for the next step." Elias handed her a folded piece of paper. "That contact I told you about, she's discreet. Runs a legal aid office downtown. Tell her Elias Bronte sent you." Serene nodded, her heart steady. "Thank you for everything." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Just promise me one thing. Don't walk into their house with fire. Walk in with truth. Let it burn them on its own." Serene smiled faintly. "I'll try." She climbed into the truck. As it rolled down the dirt path, Lyra and Amara waved from the porch. The farm grew smaller in the distance, until it was just a golden patch against the horizon. The city waited ahead, loud, unforgiving, full of ghosts from a past that thought her gone. Serene tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her new life had begun in the ashes of the old one. And soon, she would start taking back what was stolen, piece by piece, lie by lie. The city had always smelled like ambition, exhaust, coffee, rain on glass, and the faint metallic tang of money. To Serene Vallon, it now smelled like unfinished business. She arrived just after dusk, stepping off the bus with a single duffel bag and a calmness that belied the storm in her chest. The streets buzzed with life. Neon signs blinking above crowded sidewalks, laughter echoing from bars, the hum of engines passing like restless thoughts. She had once known this rhythm well, when she and Ezra built their life here, before the betrayal that nearly erased her from it. Now, she walked through it like a ghost returned to claim her name. Her destination was a modest building tucked between a closed bookstore and a laundromat. The plaque on the door read, Rowan Strath and Associates, Legal Consulting. She hesitated only once before knocking. The door opened after a pause. Rowan Strath stood framed in the doorway, tall, slightly grayer than she remembered, his sharp features softened by disbelief. For a moment, he just stared, as though his mind couldn't reconcile the living woman before him with the client whose memorial he had attended. Serene, he whispered. Her voice was steady. Hello, Rowan. He blinked, stepping back automatically to let her in. My God, everyone thought you were dead, she finished for him. That was the plan. He shut the door behind them, still dazed. Sit down. Please. Tell me what happened. She sat at his old mahogany desk, tracing her fingers over the faint scratches Ezra used to leave when signing documents. Darius happened, she said quietly. He and Melina. They left me and Lyra to die. Took everything, the inheritance, the company, the house. They faked the records, declared me missing. He told the world I'd lost myself after Ezra's death. Rowan's jaw tightened. I knew something was off. Darius was too prepared, too smooth during the estate transfer. But I had no proof. Every document looked legitimate. Because they were forged, Serene said. He had help. Someone in the financial offices. Maybe even a lawyer. Rowan leaned forward, eyes narrowing with resolve. If you're right and I believe you, we can build this case. But we'll have to do it quietly. If Darius finds out you're alive before we're ready, he'll bury every trace. That's why I came to you, Serene said. You're the only one Ezra trusted completely. He nodded slowly. Then we start with the basics. We trace the money, the transfer chains, the property titles. You said they declared you missing. Yes, and I need to stay that way. For now. Rowan gave her a long look. That's dangerous, but maybe necessary. I'll risk it, Serene replied. Just don't tell anyone I'm alive. Not yet. Rowan exhaled, rubbing his temples. All right, then we do this quietly. Brick by brick. Back at the Bronte farm, weeks passed with quiet tension. Lyra continued her lessons under Amara's gentle guidance, learning patience and reflection. But she also watched her mother prepare, writing notes, making calls in hushed tones, scanning old files. One night, she found Serene sitting by the oil lamp, a spread of documents on the table. Mom. Serene looked up, her face half lit, half shadow. Couldn't sleep. No. I had a dream again. About the car. Serene reached out, took her hand. It's okay. You're safe now. Lyra's eyes fell on the papers. Are you going after them? Serene hesitated. Not yet. First, I need to prove what they did. That's the only way we'll ever be free. Lyra swallowed. Then I want to help. Her mother smiled faintly. You already do, just by being brave. But Lyra shook her head. No, I mean help for real. She lifted her small, worn journal. I've been writing everything. From the day of the funeral. Every word, every detail I remember. Even how the smoothie smelled. Serene's breath caught. Lyra, I know it's not much, the girl said, but maybe it can help you remember the details you missed. Serene opened the diary gently. Lyra's careful handwriting filled the pages, precise, vivid, heartbreakingly mature. Descriptions of Darius's glances, Melina's false sympathy, the faint metallic taste in the drink, the way the car engine stuttered before it stopped. This was more than a diary. It was evidence. Serene closed it slowly, her throat tight. This is going to change everything. Lyra smiled faintly. Then we're in it together. In the city, Rowan began his work. He traced transactions through shell accounts and offshore transfers, uncovering inconsistencies. Funds moved from Ezra's estate into new accounts under Darius's control. Properties purchased in Melina's name. Luxury vehicles bought within days of the supposed accident. Rowan sent Serene coded updates through secure messages. Found, transfer from Ballon Trust to Kellen Holdings, falsified signature. More to come. Serene would read each one with quiet fury, her resolve sharpening with every discovery. But Rowan also warned her, they have friends in high places. Move carefully. So Serene did. She and Lyra remained ghosts, their names absent from records, their location known only to the Brontes and Rowan. By day, Serene worked in the garden. By night, she plotted in silence. Amara often joined her, bringing tea and that serene, knowing presence that seemed to calm the world. You're building something dangerous, Amara said one night, watching Serene sift through documents. But I can see you're building it with purpose. Serene nodded. I'm not angry anymore. Just focused. That's good, Amara said. Because anger burns fast. Truth endures. Serene smiled faintly. You always sound like you've lived 1,000 lives. Amara chuckled softly. Maybe I have, in the stories of others. Now tell me, when this is over, what will you do? Serene's eyes softened. Start again. For Lyra. Maybe open a foundation for widows. I don't want anyone else to go through what we did. Amara placed her hand over Serene's. Then hold on to that thought when the darkness tempts you. Months later, the walls of silence began to crack. Rowan discovered that Darius had filed false insurance claims tied to Serene's death. The payout was in the millions, transferred directly into Melina's private account. When Serene heard this, she didn't flinch. She only said, "So that's the price they put on my life." Rowan replied, "It's also their undoing." They began compiling evidence quietly. Serene collected every message, every financial trace Rowan uncovered, every note Lyra had written. She even started recording voice memos, speaking to the future version of herself who would one day face her brother in court. Lyra, meanwhile, grew more mature by the day. Her teachers at the local school, under their false identities, often commented on her intelligence, unaware of the tragedies hidden behind her calm eyes. At night, Lyra would ask, "When will we stop hiding?" Serene would answer softly, "When they've shown the world who they really are." The day Serene saw Darius again wasn't in person. It was on a screen. Rowan had sent her a link, a televised segment of Darius and Melina hosting a charity gala, in memory of Serene Ballin. Melina stood in diamonds and white silk, crocodile tears glistening under the lights as she said, "Serene was a dear sister. Her loss taught us that life is fragile. This foundation will continue her husband's legacy." Darius stood beside her, smug, applauding, soaking in sympathy and admiration. Serene watched in silence. Lyra sat beside her, trembling. "They're lying," Lyra whispered. Serene nodded slowly. "Yes. But soon, they'll run out of lies." She paused the video and leaned back, her eyes reflecting the frozen image of her brother's smiling face. Then she said softly, "They think I'm gone. Let them keep thinking that. Just a little longer." In the following months, Rowan and Serene built their quiet web of evidence. They uncovered call logs, digital trails, and internal messages between Melina and Darius discussing Phase 2, presumably the liquidation of Serene's assets. Rowan's voice message came one night, low and tense. "We're close, Serene. But if they sense we're onto them, they'll run. We need one more piece. Something emotional, something that ties them to the act itself." Serene's gaze fell on Lyra's journal resting on the nightstand. "I think I already have it." She opened it, flipping to the first page, where Lyra had written, "They thought we'd die, but we didn't. And when the truth comes, it will come like sunrise, slow, but unstoppable." Serene smiled. "That's your piece," she whispered to Rowan in her next message. The diary of a child who survived their crime. The night air at the Bronte farm grew cold again as autumn returned. Serene stood by the window, watching Lyra sleep. She felt the shift inside her, the transition from grief to power, from survival to strategy. Elias entered quietly, leaning against the doorway. "You're different now," he said. Serene turned, smiling faintly. "You noticed." He nodded. "You've stopped looking back." "I can't," she said. "Not when what's ahead finally feels like justice." Elias approached, his step slow but firm. "Just promise me something." "What's that?" "When you win, and you will, don't let hate write your ending. Let truth do it." Serene looked out at the stars, their cold light spilling through the window. "Truth," she repeated softly. "That's the only thing they can't steal." Weeks later, Rowan sent his final encrypted message, all pieces in place. "They're flaunting everything now, the house, the cars, the press events. We let them keep shining, and then, we take it all." Serene read it twice. Then she looked at Lyra, who was writing in her notebook by the fire. "Soon," Serene whispered. "They buried us not knowing we were seeds." Lyra looked up, eyes bright. "Then it's time to grow." Serene smiled. "Yes, my brave girl. It's time." The town hadn't changed much when Serene and Arya returned. The same cracked roads, the same sleepy stores, and the same endless silence that had once felt like a curse. Only this time, the silence felt like power. Because Serene wasn't coming back as the woman who had been betrayed, she was coming back as the woman who had survived. The moment they drove past the Welcome to Northbrook sign, Arya turned from the passenger seat, her eyes flicking between the trees. "Do you think they know?" she asked softly. "That we're still alive?" Serene's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No. And that's exactly how I want it." They drove past the old gas station where Serene had once stopped to buy snacks for her brother's family. The clerk inside was new, but the place still carried the scent of dust and motor oil. Everything here was a ghost of the life she'd lost. Arya had grown quieter in recent weeks. Her strength was astonishing. She had carried her mother through hunger, through nights of fever and hallucination, through the sound of vultures circling above. But she was still just a teenager who had seen too much. Serene glanced at her daughter, noticing the faint dark circles under her eyes. "We'll get through this," she said quietly. "But we have to stay careful. No one can know we're back." Not yet. They parked behind an old bed and breakfast outside town, one of those forgotten roadside inns with ivy curling up its windows. Serene had used a fake name for the reservation. She paid in cash. Everything about their return had been planned with precision. That night, while Arya slept, Serene sat by the window, staring at the moonlight spilling across the parking lot. The old anger that had been simmering inside her for months now burned like wildfire. She thought of Leon's face the last time she'd seen him, his fake panic as he'd pretended to call for help, the way his wife, Clarissa, had turned her back and whispered something about letting nature do its job. Serene's hand clenched around the edge of the chair. They thought she'd die out there. They had counted on it. But they hadn't counted on Arya's will to live. They hadn't counted on a mother's fury. The next morning, Serene took Arya into town under the guise of passing travelers. She had cut her hair shorter and dyed it a deep brown. Arya wore a hoodie and cap. Still, Serene felt a tremor of unease when she saw familiar faces, neighbors she'd once waved to, the baker who had always given Arya an extra cookie. But no one recognized them. To everyone else, Serene and her daughter were just two strangers. They stopped at a cafe near the square. The TV mounted on the wall was showing local news. Serene's stomach twisted when she saw Leon's face flash across the screen. He was standing beside a brand new office building, cutting a ribbon with that same smug grin. Leon Hartley, CEO of Hartley and Ridge Enterprises, officially expands his business empire, thanks to his late sister's inheritance fund, the anchor said. Arya's spoon froze midway to her mouth. Inheritance fund, she whispered. He used it. Serene's jaw tightened. Every penny, she murmured. That's where the 10 million went. The broadcast continued, showing Leon and Clarissa posing for photos, smiling as if the world hadn't been built on their betrayal. They looked untouchable, polished, powerful. But Serene saw it, the faint tremor in Leon's hand when the camera flashed too long. The glance he shot at Clarissa that wasn't warmth but tension. There were cracks in their perfection. When the news segment ended, Serene reached across the table and took Arya's hand. This isn't over, she said. We're going to make them remember what they did. Over the next week, Serene began gathering information. She learned Leon's company had expanded aggressively but too fast. He was drowning in secret debts. Clarissa, ever the image-obsessed socialite, was spending recklessly to maintain appearances. Their mansion, the one Serene had helped fund, was half-staffed now, and rumors hinted at trouble between them. Serene used every contact she could find. A retired banker who owed her father a favor. A lawyer she had once worked with in her early career. They all thought she was dead, so when she reappeared quietly under a new identity, none questioned her motives. She built a web of silent watchers. At night, she and Arya studied old photographs, family pictures, business gatherings, charity galas. Serene made notes. He always relied on appearance, she said. On everyone believing he was the perfect brother, the perfect husband. That's his weakness. Arya watched her mother carefully. What about us? She asked. What's our plan? Serene looked at her daughter, pride swelling in her chest. We'll start small, she said. We'll let him see shadows, doubts, signs that something isn't right. We'll make him question his own reality. The next morning, Serene sent the first anonymous email to Leon's office. It contained no message, only a photo, taken years ago. The three of them smiling together at their parents' old house. But the photo had been edited slightly. In the reflection of the window behind them, a faint silhouette of Serene and Arya appeared, standing in the forest. It arrived in Leon's inbox at 3 a.m. At 3:07, he called Clarissa in panic. Did you see this? He asked, his voice trembling. Clarissa groaned. Leon, it's just a prank. Someone must have found an old photo. But when she looked at it closer, she froze. Wait, she murmured. That reflection, how? Neither of them slept that night. For Serene, it was only the beginning. She and Arya began leaving faint traces everywhere. Flowers that matched those from her funeral bouquet appearing at Leon's office, an envelope on his car seat with the words, "You forgot us," written inside. Within days, Leon was unraveling. His secretary whispered that he'd started locking his office door, that he jumped at every noise. Clarissa had begun drinking more, snapping at everyone around her. The perfect life they'd built on betrayal was starting to rot from the inside. But Serene didn't stop there. One evening, as Leon left work, he found a small cassette tape tucked beneath his windshield wiper. Curiosity won over fear. He played it in his car. At first, there was static. Then a voice, his sister's voice, faint but unmistakable. 5 days, Leon, she whispered. 5 days in the heat. 5 days my daughter kept me alive. Leon slammed the tape eject button, his hands shaking. The cassette popped out, but he couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, suffocating. He looked around, certain someone was watching him. Across the street, Serene stood in the shadows, a hood covering her face. She watched him crumble. The same man who had once been so sure of his own control was now terrified of ghosts that weren't ghosts at all. Later that night, Arya asked, "Do you think he'll find out it's us?" Serene shook her head. No. He won't believe it's possible. He buried us in his mind as completely as he thought he buried us in that desert. His guilt will do the rest. But as she spoke, her voice wavered. Because somewhere deep down, Serene felt something stirring. Not guilt, but the shadow of what revenge demanded. Are we becoming like them? Arya asked quietly. Serene didn't answer. She stared out the window toward the moonlit horizon, where the dark outlines of the forest still whispered of death and survival. No, she said finally. They tried to erase us. I'm just reminding them we exist. That night, as mother and daughter sat side by side, their reflections merged in the glass. The beginning of justice had started, not in courtrooms or with violence, but in whispers, shadows, and the kind of fear that eats from the inside out. And miles away in his grand house, Leon woke to find a single handprint smeared on his mirror, small, like a child's. Arya's handprint. The haunting had begun. The next morning in Northbrook arrived pale and heavy with fog, the kind that muted sound and blurred the edges of everything. From the window of their small rented room, Serene watched the world slowly wake. Somewhere out there, her brother was losing sleep, losing confidence, losing the perfect mask he'd built over her grave. It should have felt like satisfaction. But instead, Serene felt something else creeping in, a coldness that wasn't just revenge. It was transformation. Arya stirred awake on the couch, rubbing her eyes. You didn't sleep again, she said softly. Serene smiled faintly, her voice low. There'll be time for sleep when it's done. She turned back to her laptop. On the screen was a list of names. Leon's business partners, investors, and silent backers. Every man and woman who had helped him grow Hartley and Ridge Enterprises using the money he stole. But Serene had uncovered something they didn't know. Leon had doctored the inheritance documents. He had forged Serene's will to claim sole ownership of the assets. It wasn't just betrayal. It was fraud. And if the right people saw those papers, his entire empire would crumble overnight. Arya joined her at the table, studying the screen. You found it. Serene nodded. The file was buried in his old email archives. But I found something else too. A trail leading to an offshore account. The one he moved the money to right after. Her voice trailed off. They didn't say the word desert. They didn't need to. Arya's lips pressed together. So what do we do now? Serene's eyes darkened. We let him destroy himself. That same morning, Leon Hartley sat at his polished mahogany desk, his face pale and drawn. His assistant, a young man named Darren, hovered nervously nearby. Sir, you've got 3 messages from the press asking about the charity fund audit, Darren said. Should I? Delete them, Leon snapped, his voice sharp. Darren hesitated. But the auditors. I said delete them. Leon leaned back, massaging his temples. The sleepless nights were taking a toll. Ever since that cursed cassette and the photographs, he couldn't think straight. He saw Serene everywhere, in the shadows of his office, in the reflection of car windows, in the soft echo of his own name whispered when no one was around. Clarissa entered without knocking, her perfume thick and sharp. You look terrible, she said coldly. Maybe you should stop drinking at night. Leon shot her a glare. You think I'm imagining all this? Clarissa crossed her arms. You're paranoid. That's what happens when you build an empire on lies. Someone's bound to come for you eventually. Leon's voice dropped, low and brittle. Don't pretend you're innocent. You were there too. Her expression faltered just enough to show a flicker of guilt. You said it was the only way, she whispered. That she'd never give it up otherwise. Leon stood suddenly, slamming his hand on the desk. I didn't tell you to watch them die. Clarissa flinched, glancing at the door. Keep your voice down. But Leon didn't care anymore. You think I don't see her, he hissed. You think I don't hear that child crying every time I close my eyes? Maybe you can live with that, Clarissa, but I can't. Clarissa turned to leave. Then maybe you shouldn't have left them, she said coldly. And for the first time, Leon saw it, the distance in her eyes. The fear. Maybe even disgust. He watched her go, feeling something snap inside. His world was unraveling. By evening, Serene sat at a small cafe with her laptop open again. She had created a new anonymous email, one that would send automatically to Leon's board of directors at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Attached to it were scanned copies of the forged will, the offshore transactions, and a single line of text. The empire you built was founded on blood. Look closer before it buries you too. She hit schedule and closed the laptop. Arya watched her carefully. He's going to lose everything. Serene nodded. That's the point. But then Arya hesitated. And after that? What happens to us? The question lingered in the air like smoke. Serene looked at her daughter, the strength in her eyes, the quiet hurt that still lived there. After that, she said softly, we'll be free. But freedom was never that simple. That night, Leon drove to the edge of town. He didn't tell Clarissa where he was going. The road led toward the desert, the same direction where he had abandoned Serene. His hands trembled on the wheel. He didn't know why he was driving there. It felt like something was calling him. Something unfinished. When he reached the barren stretch of land, he stopped the car. The wind howled through the dry grass, carrying with it whispers that made his skin crawl. He stepped out, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Serene," he called into the emptiness. "If this is you, what do you want from me?" The desert didn't answer, but something glinted near a rock. He walked closer and froze. There, half buried in the dirt, was a necklace. Her necklace. The one he'd given her on her daughter's 10th birthday. Leon staggered back, his heart pounding. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no, this isn't possible." But when he turned to leave, he saw it, footprints in the sand. Small, fresh ones, leading away into the darkness. He ran back to his car, slamming the door shut. His breathing came fast and ragged. He didn't notice the paper stuck to his windshield until he started the engine. "You remember now." His hands trembled. God help me. By dawn, the town buzzed with rumors. Hartley and Ridge stock had plummeted overnight. Someone had leaked internal files, financial records, fraudulent documents, offshore transfers. The board had called an emergency meeting. Leon's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Clarissa burst into the office, her eyes blazing. "What have you done?" she demanded. "They're saying you forged her will." Leon stared at her blankly, almost laughing. "They're saying the truth." Clarissa froze. "What?" "I forged it," he said simply, his voice hollow. "I did it because she didn't deserve it. Because I worked harder. Because I thought I could do more with it. And look where it got me." He turned toward the window. "She's coming back for me, Clarissa. I can feel it." Clarissa backed away. "You're losing your mind." Leon smiled bitterly. "Maybe. But at least now I know why." Meanwhile, Serene watched the news from the inn. The anchor's voice filled the small room. Hartley and Ridge Enterprises faces allegations of embezzlement and fraud following leaked documents implicating CEO Leon Hartley in financial crimes. The source of the leak remains unknown. Serene turned off the TV. The silence that followed was heavy but satisfying. Arya sat beside her. "He's finished, isn't he?" Serene nodded. "Almost. But I want him to understand first." That night, Serene wrote a letter. No signature, no address. Just words. "You left me for dead, Leon. You watched your own blood beg for mercy. But mercy isn't something you deserve. You built your kingdom on betrayal, and now it's sinking beneath you. This isn't revenge. It's reckoning." She mailed it the next morning. And miles away, when Leon opened that letter, his hands shook so badly he dropped his coffee. He read the words over and over until they blurred into one sentence that carved itself into his mind. "She's alive." That evening, Leon arrived home to find the lights off. "Clarissa," he called. No answer. He walked into the living room, and there, on the mantelpiece, was a framed photo of Serene's family. The same one he'd kept in the attic years ago, now sitting where everyone could see it. He fell to his knees, the photo clutched in his trembling hands. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. But there was no voice to answer, only the quiet echo of the woman he'd tried to erase. And somewhere across town, Serene whispered to herself, "Now he knows." Morning light poured through the window of Rowan Strath's office, catching the edges of the mahogany desk where Serene and Lyra sat side by side. The city below was already buzzing, reporters swarming around the Hartley and Ridge building, stock markets in chaos, whispers multiplying like wildfire. But inside this room, time felt slow, calculated. Serene's fingers traced the rim of her teacup. "Everything's in motion," she asked quietly. Rowan nodded. "The financial investigation unit has the evidence, the insurance board has the forged death certificate, and Captain Marek's team is preparing the warrants. All we need now is your appearance. Publicly." Lyra looked up cautious. "You mean he doesn't know yet?" Rowan's lips curved faintly. "He knows something. But he doesn't know you're coming back." Serene exhaled slowly. Her reflection in the dark glass behind Rowan looked like a ghost, alive, yet born from ashes. "Then let's give him something to remember." By early evening, a luxury charity gala filled the ballroom of the Northbrook Grand Hotel. The event, themed legacy and hope, glittered with chandeliers and laughter that sounded too sharp to be real. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and in the center of it all stood Darius, Kellen, and Melina, draped in designer elegance, every smile a mask stretched thin over fear. Melina adjusted her diamond necklace, the same one that once belonged to Serene. "You're too tense," she whispered to Darius. "Act like you've won." He forced a grin. "I did win." But his eyes betrayed him. There were rumors, audits, questions he couldn't answer. And a note had arrived that morning, slipped under his car door, written in delicate handwriting he recognized instantly. "See you soon." Now, as the crowd mingled and laughed, every door creak made him flinch. Every passing woman in a dark dress made his pulse stutter. The announcer's voice boomed over the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats as we begin tonight's presentation, honoring the memory of Ezra Vallon." Melina raised her glass, smile steady. "Perfect irony, isn't it?" she murmured. "Hosting a tribute for the man who made us rich." But Darius didn't reply. His gaze had locked onto the ballroom doors, where two figures had just entered. The crowd hushed. Serene Valen stood framed in the golden light, a quiet storm in a simple black dress. Beside her, Lyra held her head high, no longer the frightened child he'd left behind, but a young woman forged in fire. Gasps rippled through the audience. A murmur grew, swelling into disbelief. Is that? She was dead. My God, that's Serene Valen. Melina's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Darius went pale as marble. No, he whispered. Serene's voice cut through the noise, calm and clear. Did you miss me, brother? Reporters surged forward, flashes exploding. Melina stumbled back a step, clutching Darius's arm. It's a trick, she hissed. It has to be. But Serene kept walking, her presence commanding silence. Lyra followed, eyes unblinking, steady as her mother's shadow. Captain Ilian Merrick, standing near the stage, exchanged a glance with Rowan Strath, who nodded once. It was time. Darius Kellen, Merrick called out, voice firm and cold, and Melina Kellen, you are under investigation for attempted homicide, fraud, and falsification of legal documents. A stunned silence fell. Cameras turned from glamour to scandal in an instant. What is this nonsense? Darius shouted, his composure fracturing. She's supposed to be dead. Serene smiled faintly. You should have double-checked your paperwork. Rowan stepped forward, holding up a thick folder. These are certified copies of the forged will, transfer receipts, and insurance claims, all signed under false pretenses. We've traced every transaction, every lie. Darius's jaw clenched. You can't prove Lyra interrupted, her voice steady and crystalline. You drugged my mom. You left us in the desert. The crowd gasped again. Some recoiled, others stared with horror. Reporters began whispering to one another, typing furiously. Lyra's eyes locked on her uncle's. You thought no one would know. But I saw everything. Melina snapped. That's a child's fantasy. She's lying. Serene turned to her sister-in-law with quiet venom. She's the only one here who hasn't lied. Merrick raised a hand, signaling his officers. Take them. As the officers stepped forward, Darius tried to pull free, shouting, You can't do this. She's framing me. You don't know what really happened. But it was too late. Every screen in the room, once displaying donation totals, now flickered to life with footage and documents Rowan had provided. First came bank transfers from Serene's accounts to Darius's. Then the forged death certificate. Then the pharmacist's testimony, recorded days earlier. He asked for something strong, something that wouldn't leave a trace. Said it was for a friend who couldn't sleep. The room went silent except for the click of cameras. Melina screamed as officers cuffed her, shouting, You said they'd never find us. You said they were gone. Darius turned toward Serene, eyes wild. I'm your brother, he roared. You wouldn't be here without me. Serene's face didn't change. You're right, she said quietly. But I'm not here because of you, Darius. I'm here in spite of you. As he was led away, their eyes met one last time, his full of hatred and disbelief, hers full of calm finality. The gala descended into chaos. Guests whispered, reporters shouted questions, and security ushered Serene and Lyra into a side corridor. Rowan joined them, his voice low. It's done. Their accounts are frozen. The detectives' team will secure the rest by morning. Lyra leaned against her mother, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. It's really over? Serene smoothed her daughter's hair, her gaze softening. Almost love. But justice doesn't end when they're caught. It ends when we're free to live again. Rowan gave her a look of quiet admiration. You've done something few people could, Serene. You didn't just survive. You made the truth undeniable. There was no defiance now, just the haunting emptiness of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. Serene didn't look away. She let him see what survival looked like. What truth looked like. What justice looked like. 2 guards came to take him away, and as they let him out, his shoulders slumped. For the first time in his life, Caleb Shaw looked small. Arya turned to her mother, tears spilling down her cheeks. It's done, she whispered. We're free. Serene pulled her into her arms. Yes, baby. We're free. Outside, cameras flashed as they emerged into the sunlight. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones thrust forward, but Serene didn't stop. She only said one sentence before getting into the car. Money built his empire, but truth destroyed it. The words would replay across networks, stitched into documentaries, quoted in articles. But for Serene, they weren't meant for fame. They were a marker. A full stop at the end of the nightmare. Weeks later, the dust began to settle. The mansion was seized, the accounts frozen. Every asset Caleb had stolen was reclaimed. Serene and Arya used a portion of the inheritance, finally rightfully theirs, to establish a foundation in the desert region where they'd nearly died, helping stranded travelers and underfunded rescue teams. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about giving purpose to their pain. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, Serene and Arya stood on the same dunes where it all began. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of sand and distant rain. Arya looked out at the endless horizon. "I used to hate this place," she said quietly. "Now, it feels like it watched over us." Serene smiled faintly. "It did. It tested us. It showed us who we really are." They stood in silence for a long while. Then Arya slipped her hand into her mother's. "You know, Mum, we didn't just survive him. We outlived him." Serene nodded slowly. "Yes, and we'll keep living, for every second he tried to steal from us." As twilight painted the desert in shades of gold and blue, Serene felt something she hadn't in years: peace. Real, quiet, unshakable peace. Caleb's name would live in headlines as a warning, but theirs would live in hearts as proof of endurance. Later that night, back in their new home, Serene opened her journal, the one she had kept since the night everything changed. The pages were worn, filled with her memories, her fears, her victories. She wrote one final entry. "They tried to erase us for $10 million. But we wrote our story in scars and survival. The world knows now. And we will never be silent again." She closed the book and set it on the shelf beside a framed photo of her and Arya smiling beneath the desert sun. For the first time, it wasn't a reminder of pain, it was a monument to resilience. The night outside was quiet. The stars hung heavy and bright. And as Serene drifted into sleep, the world finally felt right again. A year had passed since the verdict, yet the echoes of that long, harrowing chapter still lingered in quiet ways, in the stillness before dawn, in the way Serene sometimes caught herself counting breaths the way she did during those 5 days in the desert, and in the small silences between her and Arya that no longer carried fear but gratitude. The world had moved on, but Serene and Arya had built something enduring from the ashes. The Valen Foundation for Resilience had grown faster than Serene ever imagined. Its mission was simple: to support women and children abandoned or betrayed by family. The first center opened in the very desert valley where their nightmare began, a small but sturdy outpost named the Haven. A plaque on the front gate bore a single quote: "Truth is slow, but it never loses the race." Amara Bronte. Elias and Amara stood beside Serene during the inauguration, their aged faces glowing in the golden sunlight. Amara held Lyra's hand, the girl she now called her desert granddaughter. "Life is a strange circle," Elias said softly, looking out at the horizon. "The same sands that tried to take you became the ground you stand tall upon." Serene smiled. "You saved us, Elias. You and Amara gave us more than shelter. You gave us a way back to ourselves." The old man shook his head. "You were never lost, child. Just hidden for a while, waiting for the storm to pass." As speeches began, Lyra stood before the gathered crowd, her voice steady, her words sharp and warm at once. She was no longer the frightened 13-year-old who whispered, "Don't die on me." She was a young woman who had faced death and found purpose on the other side. Her book, 5 Days Under the Sun, had just been released, a memoir that captured every heartbeat of their ordeal and every truth they unearthed. It had already become a bestseller, but more importantly, it had become a lifeline for others. Letters poured in daily, from women, from daughters, from people who'd survived betrayal and found hope in her words. "I wrote this," Lyra told the audience, "so no one who's left behind will ever feel invisible again. Because sometimes survival is not about being strong, it's about refusing to disappear." The crowd stood, applauding through tears. Serene watched her daughter with quiet pride. Every hardship, every scar, every sleepless night had led to this, to seeing Lyra become a voice for the voiceless. Later that evening, when the crowd had gone and the sun had slipped below the dunes, Serene and Lyra stood on the porch of the Haven. The sky blazed in hues of amber and violet. "Do you ever think about them?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above the whisper of wind. Serene thought for a long moment. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not with anger anymore. They chose greed over love, and that's a prison no sentence can undo." Lyra nodded. "I used to think survival meant revenge. Now I think it means peace." Serene wrapped an arm around her. "Exactly. We didn't survive to hate them, Lyra. We survived to live better." The sound of horses approached, Elias and Amara heading home across the dunes. Elias lifted a hand in farewell, his silhouette fading into the setting light. Serene looked up at the stars beginning to shimmer in the sky, the same ones that had watched over them on those endless nights of fear. But now, the stars didn't look distant. They looked like witnesses. Lyra leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. "We came full circle, didn't we?" Serene smiled softly. "We did. We were buried under the weight of betrayal, but we rose from it. Stronger. Wiser. free. A hush fell between them, peaceful and whole. Then, quietly, as if speaking to the universe itself, Serene whispered, "They left us to die in silence. We came back to live in truth." And as the wind carried her words into the night, the desert, the same place that once tried to claim their lives, shimmered under the starlight, vast and eternal, bearing witness to the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter who refused to disappear.